Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of CIR Realty Business Mastery. We are here with a very special guest, Carlin Koster. Now, Carlin, you're not with CIR.
I'm not.
You're with a different brokerage, and we're grateful that you could come on. And we love bringing you guys guests from all over, curating the content. And Carlin has done such a great job of building his business from not knowing anybody to getting super involved in the community, super involved with seems like everything, to be perfectly honest. And
I keep myself busy. What can I say?
That's it. And so we're going to chat about that today. So, Carlin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for giving your time to share with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here today.
So let's start off for people who don't know you. How did you get into real estate? We're going to talk about the fact that you just moved to Calgary, but where were you before then and what brought you here?
So I actually moved from Northern Alberta before I got into Calgary. I was living in Fort McMurray for 3.5 years. And before that, I was in Edmonton for almost 10 and Whitecourt for almost my whole life before that. So all in Alberta, mostly Northern Alberta. And that's kind of where I've been raised and where the seed of my family came from. I got myself into real estate for a couple of different reasons. But I think the funniest thing is that I used to be that kid I was 14 or 15 years old and I loved houses. Yeah. I used to walk around before we had MLS and any of those pieces and collect the papers, the feature sheets from in front of the houses and come home with my big bundle of feature sheets. And everyone thought that I was crazy. Aww. But that was one of my first things. I loved it. Yeah.
It's like some people like play house, like their little kitchen, stuff like that.
I shopped for them.
Playing Realty, that's what I shop for them.
And
Christmas list would have been real tough.
Yeah, exactly. But my grandpa was with a gal for a long time through high school or through, I guess, my entire life. And she was an agent with Royal LePage. Okay. And she had this big silver Lincoln Town car and bright red hair. And I thought she was just the coolest. And I loved that she got to go out and play in houses all day. So that was the beginning of it. I didn't grow up in the nicest house, so I would always idealize being able to go to and have a nice home. And that's where that all kind of started for me very early. And she said, well, you're graduating soon. Maybe you take some time and get some life experience before you go into it. So that was strike number one against me doing it at 18. Yeah. And then my grandfather, his brother was a fairly successful businessman in my hometown as well too. And we had a really good talk once about just what would be next for me. And I'd been working for McDonald's for 3 years at that point. And he said, you're on a gold mine. Learn what they have to teach you and just be grateful that you've got a really good path in front of you, which at the time I thought, you're crazy, old man. And then that's kind of what happened. I said, okay, so I need to get experience before I can go into real estate. I'm in a company where I'm going to learn a lot. Maybe I just see where this takes me. And whenever it doesn't work anymore, I'm going to go into real estate. Yeah. Well, it took 16 years and me working around the country and running Northern Alberta and building restaurants and doing all these different pieces and looking at things from a commercial aspect for then me to have the opportunity to move on when they sold all those restaurants and change their franchise model. And it just gave me this elevated platform to say, well, what do I want to do next? And it plopped me on it and pushed me into real estate in the coolest of ways. So that's how I ended up here today.
I just have to say that I used to tell people and very, very seriously that if they have McDonald's on their resume, that is a massive bonus.
Sure.
Because there's so many skills you're learning from some of the best systems.
You do say that all of the time, actually.
And I say you've also dealt with the consumers. You understand what it's like to have someone yell at you for a seemingly tiny reason. Plus you've dealt with, all aspects of it. Like it's just, it's amazing.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful for that service level because I spent my entire basically childhood and life learning to give this much product for this much service. And then going to see things like when I would buy a new car or other things and saying, well, what the heck? Like, why do I not get great service for this huge purchase when I know that I focus on all of my staff and me giving this level for this tiny little piece? Yeah. So that paradigm shift to going into real estate, it's like, well, how do I take that service level that is so minuscule and turn it into part of my business plan as well too? So
that's so beautiful.
It's neat.
I'm going to think of ordering 99-cent French fries completely differently now.
You do what you got to do.
Carlin's Disney experience at
kind of, hey? I really like it too.
Well, I've taken part in conferences where they've actually had the speakers from Disney come up and deliver on their kind of their perspective as well too. So it's all kind of wrapped together. That service level and that industry standard is what becomes the successful piece of many businesses.
So you've been moving around, and Now, have you chosen, and you get involved in the community. Did you get involved in the community everywhere you moved to? Was that something new in Calgary? And what was, so if you keep doing it, then what was important to you about that? What was that drive? What was it about giving back that way? Or what type of involvement did you do?
How long you got?
All right. Okay. Okay, we'll take it down. So simplify it.
Sure. So it all stems back to, again, with McDonald's, because I was very involved with the Royal McDonald House. And I been volunteering with them for over 15 years now. And between the Edmonton House and now in the Calgary one as well too, that was the kind of beginning of the organizational involvement that I had. I have a mother that's very involved in her community as well. And she really drove that home, that you have to give back and you've got to be present. And that's a really important aspect of her and I's connection and what she and I have talked about for our entire lives. So when I started seeing that come to light in Edmonton as I was working through there, I started looking at other opportunities as well too, going into things like a suicide hotline and distress line, where I learned about communication skills and listening to people on a phone. So that really started to kind of get my mind around, well, what else could I do? You know, and as I was working through that process being in Edmonton, I was involved with here, there, and everywhere doing different events and different things. And as I got transferred to Fort McMurray, I thought to myself, okay, well, now that I'm moving up here, what am I going to do that's going to enable me to have the connections that I did in Edmonton? And knowing that I was going to be going up there for a larger role, that community involvement was going to be so much more important than it had ever been in the past. So I kind of said to myself, okay, well, you know how you did that in Edmonton. How are you going to do it in Fort Mac? You know, and that was between learning people from the economic development teams, going to a lot of their events, getting involved with an organization called Some Other Solutions, and doing mentoring with some kind of like a Big Brothers, Big Sister program when I was there. And just saying, well, how do we look for opportunities and get ourselves into the community? Because at the basis of everything, that's who we're surrounded with on a daily basis.
Yes.
You know, so that was kind of where I started to really identify that was a successful model for me.
Yeah.
And then when I decided to take the leap and move to Calgary, I said, okay, well, you did it in Edmonton in 10 years. You did it in Fort McMurray in 3.5. How are you going to do it in 18 months minimally? Or sorry, at the maximum, because I wanted to get in there and get involved.
Yeah.
So when I moved here, I started looking to see, okay, what are some opportunities that I can get involved with? And the first and easiest one, of course, was the Royal McDonald House. So I started going to that right off the bat. I still, to this day, go in and do meals for the house 3 times to 4 times a year. And
so
I bring
near and dear to our hearts. We're huge supporters.
Yes. Yeah. It's just one of those special places.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. And if anyone has not been there, I encourage you to please go check it out, because it's important. And one of us 3 will bring you there, I promise.
Yeah.
Perfect. But saying, okay, that's now that I'm in Calgary, I've found one avenue to start getting involved with. And then I started doing a lot of interaction with HIV Community Link here in Calgary as well. I went as a guest to one of their galas last year, the Splash of Red, 2 years ago, I guess.
Yeah.
McLeod Law had sponsored it, and my friend worked there. So he said, come with me, check this out. And when I went there, I thought this was a fantastic event. So I started to engage with some of their leadership on LinkedIn and reached out to their executive director and said, you had a great event, and I'd love to be a volunteer if you've got any needs or questions going forward. So of course, I got back a message saying, well, we've got the walk coming up. Would you want to help out with that? So I applied. And as soon as she saw my kind of volunteer resume, she's like, well, yes, we'd like you to come in. And then it just kind of started going on from there, which is now broke off into other different events and community involvement. And that's just,
you know what I love is you didn't go in and say, I've done many of these events. I can really, maybe you guys should pay me or bring me on as a consultant or something like that, which you've probably done enough now that there'd be some value there, that you just said, hey, listen, I'd love to get back. I'd love to do it for free. I want to help out, and people appreciate that. I always tell people that if you're trying to get into whatever, new homes or something like that, like, offer to go in and wash floors. Like, I'll do anything to get into that. But people are just saying, oh, I'm worth more than that and stuff. It's like, get in there and show your value, and your value shines through.
Absolutely.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
And from a time perspective, because obviously you spend, I'm not going to guesstimate how many hours that you're doing this, but have you found it an issue maintaining friend circles, family circles, work circles, volunteer circles? Like, do you have downtime, or do you just, because if everybody's watching, like, wow, like I don't have that many hours in a day. Like, do you feel like that? Or do you feel like whatever you're doing is balanced? Or
I think that balance is a tricky word because we'll never have
a tricky word.
Full balance. There's an agent in my brokerage that also speaks, Michelle Carr, if you've ever heard her, she talks about ratio and giving what you need to give when you need to give it.
Yeah.
And many of my friends joke and say, well, when do you ever sleep and when do you find time for everything else? I feel like I have more than enough time and I could do more things. But for me, it's about prioritizing where that time has to go.
Yes.
You know, and my entire life, I've either had 2 jobs or community involvement. So it's a natural course for me of, well, I need to be here during this time, here during this time, here during this time, and that's just where I'm going to go. So if you were to look at my Outlook, it would be a very bright, colorful, very segmented block of time.
We need to hire Carlin as a life coach.
Our
personal family life coach.
That's right. That's the truth to that. Well, I always find it's a balance too of like what gives you energy.
Yeah.
Because if you're recharging when you're with friends or you're giving back and you're in that, and this is a relaxing environment, then there's certain activities we all have to do in the day. You know, you're in the middle of a tough deal and you're like, oh, a tough client, and you know, you can feel it draining. But then all of a sudden it's like, now I'm out doing what I love to do. Then that is a break for you.
It is.
And that can be the energy recharge. And so I like that. And if you can, even lots of times it's reframing work, reframing what you're doing.
So another piece about that is that when you do things for somebody else and you get involved and you really see the value in that, when you bring that mentality back to your regular day-to-day, some of the things that are stressors or that get you up here on a regular day-to-day fashion, they don't become as important anymore because there's somebody else that maybe has it a lot worse than you do or that is not as privileged or blessed as you are. So you come back to your regular life and say, you know what, this thing that would have me all worked up today, it's not that important. And there's nothing that I can't manage through my life. And that helps me give you that clarity, I guess you could say.
We do as a brokerage, we have a day with Toy Angels at the Salvation Army, and we have about 60 agents that go out.
Sure.
And they receive pieces of paper from children at families that might not get Christmas gifts. And it's a super fun day because you work in teams of 2 and you get this Christmas list. So it could be, 3, 4 kids, and each of them get 4 or 5 toys in these different categories. And it takes about 20 minutes to shop at the Salvation Army for all of the shelves of everybody whose toys have been donated. And at the end of the day, the entire conversation, especially, and we've been doing this the last 3 years, and the market has been not fabulous, right? There's a lot of really tough conversations that happen with sellers. There's people who have to deal with people getting divorced and who have lost. There's just a ton of stuff. And at the end of that day, people just leave feeling so grateful for what they have.
Yeah.
Right. And it takes 3 hours in that warehouse being around other people, giving back for them to be able to go home and just be like, I'm so grateful and I'm so lucky. So I agree that those experiences can just completely reshape your framework about your own environment.
You bet. Gratitude first for everything.
Yeah.
Mindset will get you through everything.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So you moved to Calgary.
Yes.
And you get into real estate and you don't know anybody. Or you probably know a few people, but not as much as we would typically say. You don't have your 150 closest people, in Calgary. So, tell me about you're the first people you started working with, the real clients. Where did those come from? Where was it? Was it the volunteerism that got it right away? How did you start building that?
For me, it was open houses, actually. I have been quite religious in doing open houses my entire career thus far, and I look at it as a job interview. So not only do I take the different layers of things like volunteerism or going out to events and kind of do the same thing, but first and foremost, there's still a job to be done. And there's opportunity for you to go out there and be the best version of yourself and to know where you shine. And I love to be in person and talk and just have fun with people. And open houses is a great platform for that. So I started doing them right off of the bat. And my very first client was within about a week off of an open house.
Oh.
It's all that, we keep talking about it. We're like, it's just, where would you?
And so many people don't want to do them, right? Like it's crazy.
Yeah, I hate putting out signs. It's like, if I handed you $8,000,
would you put out a
would
sign?
you go put a sign out or a couple signs,
But to be fair though, the other thing is looking at where do you do the best version of your business?
Yeah.
And I know that some agents that I've been involved with that have young families that are one of the stay-at-home parents that they spend a lot of time working online leads and do very well with that. But to them, that's what makes them happy and what makes them work. So everyone's got their own little niche of where they get to shine their best.
Yeah.
And that's where I felt for me off the bat was where I shone the best to begin with.
Well, that's a nice place as well though for for newer agents, because when you have a startup cost of real estate, sometimes you start looking at my Google ad spend and money on a website. And one of the things that doesn't cost a lot of money, other than some open house signs, is to say, this is something I can do, right? Like we have a lot of brand new agents watching this within the past year who would have joined us. And I know that budgets can be so tight, especially in a market like this. And it's nice to hear that, you know, there is success from doing something like that, because, you know, do your hair, put on a pair of pants, get a few comparables, right? Like have a cup of coffee, and business can come of that without having a huge financial investment, which is nice.
And the other thing that's really nice about going through that for any agent, especially if you've moved and you're in a new city and you're trying to learn it, you can strategically pick where to go, and you can learn different property styles, different communities, and you can determine where do you think that you want to work. We should all be so lucky to say, well, this is where I choose to spend all of my time. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you've got listings or buyers that are not where you spend the bulk of your time.
Yeah.
But going through that and doing open houses in different areas of the city and learning where did I feel personally that I liked to be, and where did I connect to was from open houses, because I would go to them and say, well, I really liked being here, and I learn about that area. Yeah. And I learned about different property types. You know, oh, I was in this one open house and I saw this flooring that I think you'd really like. Things like that. It's more education through exponential learning.
Yeah.
I like that.
So during your open houses, that's where you got your first client.
Yes.
And then did you end up building what from a database perspective? So part of that came from open houses. Were you able to, because I know that this is a thing that a lot of people struggle with, especially people that are coming from a previous career. And sometimes the previous career, I mean, they know 100 people, but there's that transition from saying, you know, I used to be your dental hygienist and now I'm a realtor.
Sure.
So even in your situation, it could be like, I was the person that organized this trade show at this event, or I was the one that cooked dinner here, but that's the affiliation that someone knows you as.
Sure.
And now it's how am I taking these people and earning their trust as a realtor.
Sure.
Can you give some, not even advice, just on what your experience has been to help convert, not convert sounds like a too salesy a word, but try and transition some of those relationships into seeing you from phase 1 to phase 2?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that becomes easier with time is when you get a bit of credibility behind you, when you maybe have done that first or those second deals, and you can talk about your experience, and you go from being able to say, well, I want to do to I am doing, you know, and it can be a little bit difficult off of the bat, because maybe if you are a brand new agent, this is a really big decision for someone. And sometimes some of your closest supporters are the ones that are going to wait to jump on board, because they want to work with you, but it also is a really big financial decision to be made. You know, so sometimes, in my opinion, you do find a few of those folks outside of your circle to get to be the ones that you start to get that credibility with. And of course, we all would be so lucky to have a group of friends that say, well, we're ready to buy and we're going to buy with you right away, and here we go. But it's how do you start being professional and being in that industry and giving feedback or giving value and feedback of what you're doing before you start asking for the business. It's very hard to say, and we've all seen in this day and age with Facebook and all of those things, it's very easy for someone that you haven't seen in 10 years to ask you to support their new endeavor. And I'm not that person myself, because it's got to be what's honest for me.
That's inauthentic.
And authentic is the word that I was struggling for a second there. But going out and finding and how to cut your teeth and doing open houses and things like that, it gave me the credibility and the conversation to be able to go back to those that were in my circle to say, well, here's what I'm doing, and letting them see me on social media at open houses and the way that I was communicating, for them to start kind of reaching out to me. So I think it was almost a bit backwards how I did it. I didn't go to my circle first and say, those that I do know in Calgary, please come and work with me. It was about, hey, Calgary, people that I know, I'm doing this. I hope you enjoy the show. And then going and finding clients that are going to be clients first and maybe friends second, and getting that vulnerability out of the way, because it's more of a safe place for me than my close friends and family, because I very value their relationships.
You had a 2-step process. You said you went on, put on the show, and then you earned their trust. I had a 3-step process where I went to everybody and said, please use me. No one did. And then I went on and put on a show and had the results on that way. But I just took the first step where I did that. And you know, it's interesting you say that, because we just talk about where lead by example.
Yeah.
And once people see that, they start saying, my gosh, like he's out there doing stuff. And we talk about that at length before, where someone might even have an uncle or a cousin who's in the business, but they're like, gosh, Carlin is just, you're always out there doing stuff. I mean, my uncle's always complaining about how bad the market is, and you're out there doing something about it. And people want to work with people like that. Like you walk into a room, and as soon as you start talking, like your energy is infectious, and that's a compliment. And just like, and you want to be around people like that. So, keep that going, because, we need a lot of, in down economies and stuff, you need people that can brighten the room. And those are the people that you want to hang out with.
I think the whole talking about what you're doing, even before you were able to do a bunch of sales, is really important to you, because that's something that a lot of realtors struggle with is, well, I haven't done a sale yet. But you could be taking some video or a couple photos of you door knocking a community, or just standing in a community saying, I just gathered some market stats on this. I'm going to be dropping these off at some of the communities today. I mean, that's an activity. Being at open house is an activity. We'll talk about this later, but going to Krebs and participating in something is an activity. So there's so many ways to say I am doing that will give people confidence without you actually having to do that transaction, which is kind of cool for real estate.
Yeah.
And more people need to do that.
You've got to immerse yourself in it, I think, professionally, whether that is in the professional sense of going to the board and being part of that, but also going out and actually doing activities and not being afraid to cut your teeth and really work hard for it.
Yeah.
Knocking on doors, having the doors closed in your face, going out to open houses, just anything that gets you out in front of people. But it's what has to happen in the very beginning. You don't just say, okay, I'm licensed now, here's my phone number, and the phone rings. That doesn't happen. And if it did, well, we'd all be in a very, very different place in our careers. But I think that taking the time to really try and learn it and looking at it from the foundational perspective, it will come to you afterwards.
So meeting people, because we keep talking about meeting people, there's a lot of, I know people watching, because I know some of the people watching who, that's scary. Like the thought of saying, I'm going to email an organization and show up and be part of a community is scary, right? Like not everybody that comes naturally to as it would for you. What would your advice be to someone who genuinely does want to get to know more people, but just doesn't really know where to start? Like a couple easy first steps, like just do this today or approach it this way.
So let's look at two different buckets. The first is, what are you interested in? Something that you have passion for, that you like, is the easiest way.
Yeah. Authenticity has to be there. Yeah.
Even if it's like, hey, I like to make French breads, so I'm going to go join a French bread making class. It's just for an example.
I like that.
That's something that you can go and do, and you can learn, and it adds a layer to who you are, but it also puts you in a situation where you're on an even playing field. And it will always go to, oh, well, what do you do? That always happens. And no one wants to be the first person to walk in the room and say, hey, I'm the realtor, because everyone turns around.
Start hucking up business cards.
Right? But you have them with you, and you go there and you start talking to people and just be a person.
Yeah.
And that's the first layer. And then when they start to peel back that next layer and find out more about you, then they learn and go, oh, well, that's cool. And there's a slight appreciation from the general population, I have found. If the first thing that you said is not, I'm a realtor, it's, hey, I'm Carlin.
Yeah.
I'm here today because I wanted to learn to do this like you did, or whatever that's going to be. So I think that's the quickest and easiest win, is to find something that you like and find out where there's a group of people doing that and go to that. And the second thing is, what would scare the crap out of you? Something that you are like, I would never want to do that. And then go and do it. For me, with Calgary here, I started going to Toastmasters. And
that would be really scary one for a lot of people.
It is. Something you may not know about me is I spent most of my childhood with a speech impediment and going to speech therapy. I couldn't say R, and I really struggled with communication itself. So I have my entire life focused on how to be better with communication, but I'd never gone and done organizational or competitive public speaking. So when I got to Calgary, that was one of the first things that I did. And talking about how to connect to an organization of people, I went to two different groups. One of them was at the real estate board, the Krebs Talkers.
Yep.
The other one was over in West Hills, by where I live. So it was almost like I had one version of it where it was professional networking, people like Wendy Morrow, Lorna Ham, just some of the greats that are, you look at them and say, how have you had this amazing career and still just be the down-to-earth person that you are? So that was one side where I got to experience some of the really great people within the organization and scare myself that way. The other side was, well, I'm in a community association building with all of my neighbors doing something that we're all just equally terrified about.
Right. Yeah, I bet most people are in a similar situation. Most people probably don't walk into a Toastmasters room being like, no big deal.
Yeah.
Those are the people that typically go to Toastmasters.
Exactly. Which then it gets you into some of those areas where you get to, again, get more layers.
Yeah.
I speak fairly well, and I've got better over the years. And one of the first meetings, they said, you need to be in this group. And my mentor that I had, she said, you know what? I would like you to be our test speaker for the district conference. And I'm not sure if you know much about Toastmasters.
I do.
So my second speech I ever gave was in front of 350 people at their district conference, which then resulted in, I think there were 6 people doing a evaluation of my speech as their contest.
Oh, wow.
And so we spent 2 months practicing that, and I was scared off my chair. I'm like, well, what if I just get up there and just shut down?
Yeah.
But what a cool layer that became. And when I tell that story again to people throughout my life now, it's not about, well, that's what helped me to do better with real estate. But let me tell you, it helped me do better at real estate. I got to go out there and just speak in front of a ton of people and look at their body language and their engagement and how they responded to what I said.
Yeah.
So now if I go into a room, I can take little bits and pieces of that with me, and that helps me.
That's great. That's great.
So scare yourself.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Lululemon, on the Lululemon bag, says, do one thing every day that scares you.
There you go.
This is not a scary thing, but it's a little bit relatable, and it's super basic to everything that you said. But for all the other basic people like me watching this, I joined a curling league this year. So we joined a golf course, and I didn't really know anybody, and some of the girls invited me to curl. I wasn't going to do it because there's 9 p.m. things, and I didn't know anybody. I knew one person on my team. That was it. And I met her golfing 2 days prior, and then she invited me. I wasn't going to do it, and I said no. And then I said to Lindsay, I'm like, oh, it was really nice. You know, Janelle invited me to be. I've never curled. I'm not a curler. I'm not a team sport person. I'm athletic.
Until
I'm not a
now.
team. So, but and you know, Lindsay's like, just do it. So now once a week I go curling, and I've made these 5 new friends, and there's 3 different curling teams that before and after all get together for a drink in a little clubhouse, wherever it is. And I was driving home last night at 11:45 because we were the last ones on the ice because we never shake hands because that's just our team. Not in a bad way, but we're just close to a tie.
You mean you don't
Anyways,
quit before it ends? They always shake hands at the end.
Yeah, that's true. That's different curling terminology.
Yeah.
But when you say the layer thing, and you know, not because I would tell anybody that I'm more interesting now, but I genuinely feel a little bit more interesting than before I curled, which is a weird thing to say because it's not that curling is interesting, but just doing this thing that I've never done before with people that I've never hung out with before in a community complex that I otherwise would never go to, wearing clothes that I wouldn't have otherwise. Like, I just feel like I have something a bit more interesting to talk about and a different perspective on something that otherwise, and it's just a curling league. And maybe that means I need to do more than I'm doing to really feel that. But like, I genuinely drove home last night being like, curling has changed me.
And that's like the key takeaway from that is you went somewhere and you tried something different and it's given you a spark in your personality and some joy in your eyes. I can tell you by looking at you right now.
Over curling.
But these are the things that as we go through our lives and we do different little pieces, they give us different layers and we could become multifaceted. You know, if you've only got one thing to talk about, we all know somebody that only has one thing to talk about. And within about 30 seconds, you're just looking for the exits. You're like, where do I go? How do I get out of here? So how do you not become that person? Not that there's anything wrong with them if that's their choice, but I like having different things to talk about, you know, and in this industry, we meet people that we don't know. So you need to find that quick connection, you know, so it's all about, well, what do you have to talk about? Give them something to bring up. And then if you can connect to it, well, then you've got more of that instant connection versus, well, please come in and have a look at this house. Or why don't we go out and look at a house for you? Versus, hey, you know what? Last night out curling, I almost fell on the ice. So we're going to be out being careful today because it's a little bit slick. Instant connection with them about something.
Yes.
You know, where you can just change that conversation.
So true. So true.
Let's switch gears for a bit because you volunteer on a realtor level in organized real estate as well through CREB and other things, or I should say, like, you get involved in the realtor community as well. So tell us, just to sort of start us off with that, why were you interested in that? What was the appeal of that? And then also, what kind of things have you done to date with that?
Sure. So I'm still, I guess, very new to that because I haven't had an organizational role yet.
Right.
Other than going and doing the Habitat for Humanity and some of those different pieces. But when I got into this industry, one of the things that I really wanted to focus on was, how do you do the job, number one? How do you know who's doing the work around you, number two? And what kind of organizational relationships exist and how do I find those? Which is why I went to Toastmasters at the Krebs Talkers.
Right.
Through that, I started to see the different individuals that are very prevalent in the community and seeing what kind of relationships those can afford for newer agents. It's a quick phone call saying, hey, you know what? I got a question, but I know that you've been doing this a long time. Do you have anything you could give me for advice or sharing for me?
So brilliant.
You know, and for me, the first year wasn't about making money. It was about, how do I get into everything like a dirty shirt and go to everything? You brought up earlier, Lindsay, about going to the real estate board for little classes.
Yeah.
My first month before I could do my orientation, I went to, I think, 13 or 14. I was there every other day. That's awesome. So when I walk in now, they're like, we haven't seen you forever. I'm like, yeah, I'm busy now, but I went to every class that you had available. I can't go to them again.
I love that.
You know, but it's how do you find like what exists? And we in the agent community know that there's others that complain about the fees that we pay and this and that. Well, I find that those that complain about them don't take advantage of them.
Yes.
So if we're mandated to pay them, why wouldn't we go and use every free dollar that we are being given or that we are paying for, go to the courses, be involved? Like, we were all there together at the board of directors voting session.
Yeah.
And out of 5,500 realtors, there was 60 of us there?
Yeah.
Yep.
I thought that was a little bit of a slap in the face to those that are being involved because they're making decisions and advocating on our behalf. So why wouldn't we get in there and hear about what's going on, make informed choices, and be part of the solution versus just sitting maybe behind our computer and complaining about it? Because that happens every day.
Yeah.
So how do we take that mentality and say, let's get involved, let's be here, be part of governance, and just understand it is probably the better starting point. But
it's so true. And you're right. Boards do offer, and just like, brokerage is another one, right? There's so many people, and it doesn't matter which brokerage you belong to, the best, the worst. There's so many things that people, very well-intentioned leadership of brokerages try and do.
Sure.
And it's always too expensive. It's too expensive. And same with Krebs, right? Like Krebs, Freeze, Eureka area. But if you were to look down and say, what if this month, just for fun, and try it for 1 month, I used everything I was given. I attended everything that I was invited to.
Sure.
Like, I wonder what that would look like. And I bet in some ways you would feel like you were part of a country club because you would have something to do or go or use or utilize every single day. You would probably be so busy with what was given to you that you're right. Your perspective on the money you're paying would become, I can't believe I'm getting all of this for this little, which is just a good mentality. It's just a good mentality of abundance to have because you're going to have to pay someone something. You're not going to get out of your Krebs fees. Yeah. So why not show up to that? And even the board of directors event, there was a beautiful trade show. The wine was great. They had wonderful appetizers. I mean, Alan was there. You could speak to people. Like it was lovely. Like there was real value to that event that you didn't have to pay for out of pocket to go to.
Just go and show up.
Show up.
Yeah.
So talking about, and you mentioned a few, but let's circle back a bit to that. What have you noticed personally in your business? What is that sort of what's in it for me portion for realtor that it's like if you got involved at the board with different realtor events and various other things, what have been some of the big takeaways for yourself?
I think the biggest one, and this is maybe not what you're going to expect, but better time management for my mentality. And I'll say that why, because what happens when we don't know about something? We make up a story for what it is in our minds. Someone makes a comment or a post here and we think, oh, well, what's actually going on? And then your brain switches to, I'm going to fixate on what this point is and try and understand or figure it out. And when it's not correct or there's somebody else's observations, you get caught up in what they're doing.
I could cry. I relate to that so much. My eyes are watering thinking about that. It's so true. Speculating is very time consuming.
But if you go and actually learn and read the changes to the act and be part of those different educational sessions, then and when you have 5 people over here complaining about what they think is happening when it's not what's actually happening, you can just shut it down. because for your mentality is like, hey, you know what? I got this. I understand it. I don't have to worry about this. So I'm going to give it what it deserves for energy. And that's a little bit. And then I'm going to move on to what the priority is. And that's serving your client and meeting new folks and doing a great job with taking care of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I would say is what I get the most out of that. What I'd encourage, especially new realtors, go and learn and be part of some of those organizations or those moments where you have the organization shining through. Then you get to meet new people too that are not in your brokerage, that are maybe going through the same things that you are.
Yep.
You know, two of my best kind of realtor friends, we went through basically all of those courses together. And after the first couple, we were like, hey, I'm seeing you again.
Yeah.
And now here we are 2 years later, we go have our basically quarterly lunch and catch up and we high five each other and support each other. And we're all at different brokerages.
Yeah. Love it.
And not even the same brand of brokerage.
Yeah.
But we went through it at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's that.
You guys are walking the
compassion.
same journey. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is if I ever have to do a deal with either of those ladies, it's going to go real well because we're going to be able to say, I got you. I know how you are. Let's get it done for our clients, which is a whole other bag of chips we can talk about too. But
but it's true. It's like deals go smoother when you have respect for the realtor on their side. You have a positive relationship with them. I can't mention we just bought our own house and you know the realtor on the other side. We vaguely knew each other. It was a lame hippie. I'll say it. We just we'd crossed paths. We knew of each other.
Sure.
And the first phone call was just like, hey, so when's the last time we did a deal together? Well, I haven't personally sold a house since like 2007.
Yeah.
But it was like, oh well, except for our own. But I was just like, oh well, I didn't, and and then we had started this conversation. We're like, yeah, but you've been around. Yeah, I've seen you. I've loved with some of the stuff you've done. Said that to her, and mutually, and all of a sudden, things just go and it's elevated. Pretty soon at the end, we're texting each other. It's like, yeah, two great realtors getting it done. Like it was
absolutely
fantastic experience.
Which is how it should be.
That's right.
Yeah.
And when ego gets in the way, it's not.
Oh man.
And that is the biggest thing that I struggle with. It's just there's somebody wants to sell a house, somebody wants to buy a house. There is somewhere in the middle where everybody has won.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if we can get there, perfect. And of course, if you're on the selling side, you want it to be a little bit closer to the list price. And the buyer side, you want it to be a little bit lower. But there's somewhere in there where everybody has won.
That's right.
And if we can do that and we can be good to our clients to bring them to that point, everybody wins.
Yeah.
So that should be the mission every time, in my opinion.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Let's we'll wrap up with a question here on, I guess, servicing people, because we're talking about servicing.
Sure.
Your clients, your sphere of influence, people in your database. What are you doing in general? Because I assume you're probably good at this, just knowing you a little bit. What are you doing to stay in touch with them and add value to them on a day-to-day basis? It could be real estate wise, it could be not real estate wise, but let's say you have, and I don't know what your numbers are, but let's say you have 100 people in a database. What does your year with that group look like?
A lot of different things, actually. I think it comes down to what is the person, and I really try and make everything that I do for my clients somewhat individualized to what they are. For example, we just had Halloween pass. So I went and got over 100 pumpkins in my car. And I washed them all and I brought them out, spent 2 days delivering pumpkins.
You washed them?
Oh, I hand washed every one of those pumpkins. No one wants a dirty pumpkin delivered to them.
Yeah,
wow,
that's
right. That is so going the extra mile. I'm really impressed.
That's a good call.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I got home, my hands are real dirty. And it was like, this is why I need to get gloves and wash these things. And I'll show you a picture afterwards.
Yeah.
But not everyone necessarily got a pumpkin, because one of my friends that I was going to go deliver one to said, I don't want one of those. So I had a couple of extra ones. And then I saw a girl on Facebook saying, our pumpkin's frozen. We've got 2 upset boys. Hey, I messaged her, said, I've got 2 more pumpkins. Why don't you come and get them?
Yeah.
And she said, well, what are you charging for them? Because there were some people charging some exorbitant amounts for pumpkins this year.
Yeah, there was a pumpkin shortage this year.
Why do I see pumpkin shortage? There was a hashtag. There was a hashtag for it. It's a huge deal.
Right? And I just said, come and get them. If you've got 2 young boys that theirs are frozen, I would happily give you the ones that we were going to carve tomorrow.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, she needs to buy a house now. But but it's little things like that where you get to go out and you get to have fun. Yeah. I'm about to do my Christmas card bonanza where my very first year, this is a funny story actually, I like to send out Christmas cards. And my very first Christmas of doing real estate, I didn't have a huge network, so I sent Christmas cards to houses. In my door knocking travels, I used an app called Spodio, where you can basically link who you talk to. And I made a list of my top 50 coolest houses and some of their different aspects. including I was down in Inglewood and there was a postman that was walking by, and I said, what house should I watch out for knocking on doors? He said, that one over there. They've got this dog Roscoe that's super mean. So I sent Roscoe a Christmas card with a couple of tea bags in it from David's Tea. And I said, hey, Roscoe, I hear from the postman that you do a great job of protecting your family. So here's some tea for mom and dad. Sit on their legs and keep them warm this holiday season. And I have an Excel spreadsheet of all of those cards I've ever sent. And that every year, they get one. Roscoe gets a card every year.
That's awesome.
And I've never got a response from most of those cards.
Yeah.
But I don't care because
it doesn't matter.
When I do,
Yeah.
when I do, you know, like to like the coolest patio in Calgary, or like, thank you for making Calgary a more beautiful city because of the curb appeal that you have designed or purchased with your home.
So good.
Yeah.
And it was one of the funnest things that I've done, but I add to that every year. So I do minimally over 100 cards, and now it's going to probably be a lot more. But it's just those little things where you just take a moment out of your day and spend your time up in maybe at your desk and just write a bunch of cards out, you know, or I like to bring clients to the Rumpel House. You know, I say, hey, I got room for 5 people to come out. Please come and check it out. And the hope for that is that they're going to enjoy it and want to go do it themselves.
And you get great responses from that.
Well, that's just it. It's just come out and see what I do. Come be part of my life because you are now. Yeah. So how can we be part of each other's lives together? Yeah. You know, and for me, that's just kind of one of the coolest things.
One of the things when we talk about, because we do a bunch of the Ronald McDonald House Nights as a brokerage too, and we get our realtors to, you know, go and bring their people. And I'll often say, you can have a movie night there. You can, you know, bring people for dinner.
Yep.
But if you do something like the Ronald McDonald House and you give 7 other people the opportunity to give back and feel good about themselves, and they wouldn't have done that by themselves, like they're going to leave that experience feeling so unreal. And you're the reason that happened. Like that memory that you gave them to do that, like,
but I think
words for it. It's beautiful. And they may have never thought to do it by themselves.
But one of the things that when you're doing some of those situations is don't ever forget that it's not necessarily about you. Like, because I leave every time going, I brought them here. No, I do something that I can open the doors. You made the choice to come here and be part of this. Thank you for doing it with me. And then that kind of that collaboration spirit comes to happen. And then they drive home having the curling moment where you're like, I'm so excited about this, you know, and then it puts it onto their mind because people will always remember how you made them feel versus what you've done or what you've said.
Exactly.
You know,
and
are they going to say, well, Carlin paid for the food and brought me here? No.
No, but I'm sure they're going to be very grateful that you opened them up to an experience that let them feel something,
100%.
Right? Because that's a lot different than, you know, come out for a nice dinner, which is also great to do. But the feeling that you get from a nice dinner versus the feeling you get from, you know, feeding 30 families like that, I just fed 30 families feeling is, you know, and that's associated with you now, which I just think is beautiful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Actually, in Edmonton, this is one of my favorite stories. When I used to work at McDonald's, I worked at one of the stores that was right beside where their house is. And I got a call from our kind of lady in the office one day that just said, there's a kid here that will only eat pickles and chocolate milk. It's just he's going through chemotherapy and that's what he wanted. So we answered the call very, very quickly and we brought a bunch of pickles and chocolate milk over. And a year later, they had their block party and I'm the pickle guy now. So there's a cartoon of me on their wall with a thing full of pickles. And that's where I get to have fun. And I'm like, I get to do that. My hope is that sometimes people will go to those experiences and it will spin off into them being able to create that kind of a relationship for them. Because then the community wins, the organization wins, everybody wins. Because everyone gets excited about it.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. You know, to add to this, our perspective is that, you know, Kirsten talked about this at the beginning. It's, you know, how many people you adding value to. And I like to think of like how many people you helping in your business and realtors that are not putting themselves out there. And I believe that, you know, there's value in using a realtor and there's value in that. And, and not everyone has had a great experience with a realtor. And if you're one of those people that truly represents your clients well, does these things very, very well, then you add value to the marketplace. And the only way to add value to the marketplace is by having clients to work with. Because otherwise you're not giving back. And so you need to be putting yourself out there. You need to be sitting in the open houses. You need to be giving back to the community, building trust, because they're better off being served by someone like a Carlin than somebody that doesn't have the same intentions. So with that in mind, someone who's looking to grow their database and gain more business. And let's say they say I have nothing in my pipeline. I think it's valuable that they do have stuff in their pipeline because they're giving back.
Mm-hmm.
What would your advice be? And it can be a rehash of some of the things you've said, but to wrap us up here, what advice would you give someone who's looking to kick their business up, get more people, help in their pipeline, and filling that up? What would you say?
So I think that the first and foremost step, if someone's saying, I have nothing in my pipeline, the first question I'd ask them is, do you know who you want to serve? Who is the person that's going to have the best experience from you as an agent? Because they're the ones that are going to give you the referrals in the long term. So if they don't know who that is, figure out who their avatar, who's that person. Secondly, once they know who they would likely benefit the most, where are those people going to be? Where is there an opportunity for me to get involved? Where my people are going to be?
Yeah.
You know, whether that is volunteering or going to events or an open house in a certain community. Figuring out, I want to serve these folks. I want to serve them here. I'm going to go do that. Because then when you start figuring out, how do I chase that person that I want to work with? And then you can then look for opportunities that are going to be in the areas that you want to be with the people that you want to be in. You can start chasing down that funnel refilling station, I guess you could say.
Yes. And it's nice because it's some focus.
Yes.
Like to say, get out there. I mean, people always say, go get out there. It's like,
yeah,
out there's a really big place.
It is.
It's a really big place.
Sure.
So putting that focus on it helps give some perspective, and it really narrows it down. Right? Like, no, I want to work with seniors. Right? Like, I like accessible housing.
Yeah.
I love my grandparents. Like, that's my shtick. It's like, well, out there just got a little bit smaller.
Yeah. Whenever any new agent that you usually talk to, you say, well, who are you going to work with? I can help everybody.
Yeah.
I can help everybody. We can all buy houses together. Is a very naive perspective. And I did that a little myself off the very back. I'm like, I can help anybody.
Yeah.
And then when you start to realize who you really like to work with and who makes it easier for you to give them that better service, then you narrow it down and it does get a bit smaller out there. So any new agent, I would think, should really take that time to circle back and say, who am I going to work with, how, and where can I find those people? And then they're going to go to those places.
And plus, you only have limited resources. Like it's, there's 1.3 million people in Calgary, and, even greater Calgary area gets even bigger. And you think that you're going to spend, $3 a month per person to try to get to know everybody. Like, no one's got a $5-6 million a month marketing budget.
No.
And so it's like, okay, well,
even
to
if it's
your
just
point,
a coffee meeting budget, like,
yeah, to say,
I
it's fine if you meet somebody and their house happens to be in Auburn Bay versus, Evanston. It's like, okay, so you're willing to look at those communities. That's fine. But like you said, your target market, that niche, who are your people? I love that. Not in a Don Cherry way, just like sort of a, who are the people that your tribe, right? And that matters. So that's great
100%
advice.
It does.
Great advice.
Carlin, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me
I think
today.
this is one of my favorite interviews.
Is it?
I don't think I've smiled this much.
Well, it's because you started curling recently.
That's right.
I am coming off a really good curling game, so maybe that's part of it.
So we wake up in the morning.
Mostly you.
We wake up in the morning, and I think most viewers know that we're married now. But so we wake up in the morning. The first thing she says to me is not like, "Hey, good morning." It's like,
because he was asleep when I got home.
I only missed one shot. And I was like, what? It's like, I curled 90%. I was waiting all night to tell you. I'm like, okay. And every time she's about to go to curling, she's like, should I go? Shouldn't I go? Oh, I just feel like I didn't have to go. And then she comes back from curling and poof, peacock flag, peacock feathers out, walking around. So there you go. Well done.
But you know what? A credit to your relationship that is now so fully blossomed in front of all of this. She was so excited to tell you that she just couldn't wait anymore.
Yes.
I couldn't. I was waiting for him to stir. And he didn't. He kind of moved over and he and he didn't even say anything, but he just, like, something that I knew he was awake. And I was like, yes.
I'm ready to tell you.
That's right.
No, I get that 100%.
Awesome.
Well, Carlin, thank you so much for your time being here.
Me.
I know that this is going to help a ton of people. So, and everyone who's watching this, and for everyone listening on our podcast right now, we actually have people who listen to this podcast from all over North America. So your message is going to resonate with a lot of people in a lot of different cities, which is kind of your MO, actually.
I guess so, right?
We appreciate it.
So
well, thanks for having me here today.
You're welcome.
Yeah, don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and check out the CR Realty Business Mastery podcast anywhere that you get your podcast. All the best, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Thanks, everyone.